Today we're going to be doing an overview video similar to my recent loadout videos, but we're not going to be going in as much depth for these particular builds. This is just kind of a quick rundown of what I use with this weapon and what I would recommend pairing it well with, but there's plenty of options that you could pair it well with, as well as there's plenty of options that you can modify it with. So today we're going to be talking about the minigun. So first up, we got our clean overclock. Our first one is a little more oomph. This gives us one more damage, as well as a slightly faster spin up time. The way I like to run the minigun in general, and with this one, is like this, going with a better accuracy, more ammo, blow through rounds, faster spin up, and cold as the grave. But with this being a clean overclock, you can really build it however you'd like. I do really like the faster spin up in tier 4 though. That one is really cool. Then you have a 0.1 second spin up time. I would highly recommend you try out that one at the very least, see how you like it, because I really love it. But generally in all these tiers, you can kind of take whatever you want, whatever you're going for. The build that I have here is kind of for general purpose use, and the overclock that I paired this with for a secondary is the burst pistol using composite casings, which just gives you more ammo as well as a faster rate of fire, I believe. This build is very simple and just a straight upgrade to both these weapons. Our second clean overclock is the thin drum walls. This gives us extra ammo, as well as it gives us faster cooling. I did take the cooling in tier 1 with this because I don't know if I'd ever stack the two together, and if you do, you basically can't overheat your gun, or at least it's very difficult to overheat your gun, because as soon as you see it get red, let go of it for like half a second, and then your gun is completely cooled down and you can continue on firing. That is really cool. This just gets you extra ammo. The cooling is nice. You can once again run this however you would like, so you can take a build like this one, which is what I was using for this. Fire bullets and exhaust vectoring in tier 5 might be a little bit weird with this one. Exhaust vectoring can work if you find yourself constantly overheating this. Fire bullets is, I would say, less useful with this one because your cooling comes up so quickly that it's hard to maintain the fire bullets. And with this, you basically have a minigun that can continually fire, which is great because a minigun works well against almost everything. So you can pair this with whatever secondary you want to, just like the first one. I paired it with 6-shooter from the revolver. This just increases your rate of fire, gives you more shots, has a slightly longer reload though, but another overclock that I would consider just a straight upgrade to the revolver. So it pairs really well with just what I would consider a straight upgrade to the minigun. Up next we have exhaust vectoring, which is a balanced overclock. This gives us increased damage, but we have less accuracy. That's not a huge deal because in tier 1 you can just take the accuracy for the minigun, and that's what I would highly recommend. And then you basically go back down to the same minigun, actually a little bit more accurate than the base minigun. Beyond that, you can build it however you'd like. You could build it for damage, or you could build it for ammo, you could build it for armor breaking, you could build it for stuns, faster spin ups. It's very similar to a little more oomph. I don't like it quite as much because of the faster spin up from a little more oomph. I like a little bit more, but if it's an overclock that you do have and maybe you don't have any others, I find it to work quite well with this. And then for a secondary, I decided to pair this with Mole. This is very heavily single target damage focused, and that's what I was taking it for. You could take other overclocks though if you think that you have enough single target damage with the minigun already. You could go with something like Hellfire, Magic Bullets, Electro Mindlets, whatever you would really like. Up next we've got Burning Hell. Burning Hell basically gives you a short range flamethrower on top of your minigun, but you do overheat the gun faster. That's not a huge deal, and I like actually running all overheat with it. I was trying out this build and I really enjoy it. This gives us pretty high DPS for single targets, as well as we can just use the flamethrower plus exhaust vectoring to give us some level of crowd control. You don't really need exhaust vectoring. You could go with hot bullets too. Hot bullets is really good. In tier 5 this time though, don't take cold as the grave. Usually it's really good, but it's not on Burning Hell. You don't want to be cooling down your minigun. You want it to heat up so that you can light things on fire, and so that you can potentially get either the benefits from exhaust vectoring, dealing more AoE damage and scaring enemies away, or dealing fire bullets so that you can do more damage that way. Aside from that, basically everything else is completely your choice. And since Burning Hell works so well with fire, it makes sense to take a secondary that works really well with fire. I took volatile bullets with a revolver, which makes you do triple damage when things are on fire with the revolver. Really good for single target damage. The minigun can take care of anything at close to medium range or even long range just with standard fire. So if something is really big like a bulk or an oppressor, shoot it with the volatile bolts and you'll kill it. Up next we have compact feed mechanism. This increases our ammo by a decent amount for the minigun, but it decreases our rate of fire. That doesn't really matter. You can take the rate of fire in tier 1 and go back to the same rate of fire that the minigun has and just have that big ammo increase. I like to do that. You could also just take this for all ammo and have close to 4,000 rounds with a minigun. That is really cool too. Makes it so you can be super ammo efficient, and this is generally the way that I run it, but you can of course switch it around however you'd like, because this one doesn't really come at much of a downside. For a secondary, since we have so many bullets with our primary weapon, I decided to go with an overclock that doesn't have very many bullets for our secondary. I went with elephant rounds for the revolver. This gives you really high damage, basically turning your revolver into a pocket sniper rifle, but you lose out on ammo and the recoil is pretty substantial. So just just use this to pick off dangerous targets like acid spitters or trijaws, or do really high damage to things like Praetorians, oppressors, menaces, anything like that. Use the minigun to clean up everything else. This build can kind of struggle with smaller things like swarmers, so you might want to go with the secondary with more crowd control. Again, you could go Hellfire on the coil gun, or you could go with something like Magic Bullets Revolver. That works really well too. Next is Bullet Hell. This one decreases our damage, increases our spread quite a bit, but makes it so every bullet has a chance of bouncing off a surface and hitting an enemy. That is super fun, and this is probably one of my favorite overclocks for the minigun, and probably just one of my favorite overclocks in general. This one does decrease our damage by a significant amount, so we do want to make up for that. This is the way that I usually build this one. This one actually works really well against crowds, really well against small things, but doesn't do very well against big things. It switches the minigun around from doing high single target damage to now doing pretty good AoE damage and doing okay single target damage. Super fun overclock, not the best to take on something like a caretaker mission or an elimination mission, but if you got like eggs or Swarmageddon or something, very fun. Our build kind of reflects that. I have better accuracy to make up the accuracy penalty, more damage so we can 2-shot swarmers, because otherwise you have to 3-shot them if you take ammo. Tier 3 you can take whatever you want, they're all really good. Blow through rounds I like, but stun and armor breaking is also really good. And then fire bullets in tier 5, 4, once again you just pick whatever you want. Fire bullets in tier 5, because that way we can actually light things on fire and do a little bit more damage to them. For secondary, rather than taking something that does do single target damage, which you could absolutely do, you could take something like Mole or Lead Spray or Elephant Rounds. All of those would be really good as a secondary. I decided to take Magic Bullets with the Revolver so that we could have even more bullets hitting enemies randomly. Very fun build, very good at crowd control, not so great against big enemies, not way great against robots either. And then for our final minigun overclock, we've got Leadstorm. Leadstorm gives you massively more damage from the minigun. However, we can't move with this. You sort of can if you bunny hop with it, then it's not so bad. We also lose out on stun chance and stun duration. Doesn't really matter, we're just going to be killing things, and this is all for single target damage, and I have it built all for single target damage. You can take whatever you want in tier 1, they're all good. Tried them all and they all work really well. More damage in tier 2 because we're going to be hitting hard. Armor breaking in tier 3 because we're going to be hitting hard, but you could take blow through rounds too, that works really well. More damage in tier 4, and then Cold as the Grave in tier 5 so we can cool down our gun and keep firing. Very high single target damage, very good at long range, really strong if the enemy is not focusing you, really strong on things like escort missions too, because if Dottie's moving you can just stand on top of her and then you don't need to move. Now with the secondary, I paired this one with triple tech chambers from the coil gun. Pretty decent overclock for doing high single target damage as well as having crowd control, especially if you take the electricity in tier 5. You could once again go with Magic Bolts for the Revolver, basically anything with the burst pistol. These were the things that I paired them with, but there is plenty of other options, and I will be going into these in greater detail as well as showing them off a little bit more in the loadout videos, which will be coming. But this is a general overview. Tell me your thoughts on the minigun overclocks, and which one is your favorite, or which ones do you really enjoy using. Thanks everybody for watching this. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.